Jai Baba, is that Rajesh with freedom or
Yes.
Rajesh
Yeah.
in
Yeah. Jai
captivity?
Baba, everyone.
Yeah, Baba, Rajesh.
Jai Baba.
Out
Is
in
it
the
Rajesh
open.
in captivity?
Sorry.
Is it Rajesh in
Rajesh is out in
captivity?
the open, not in quarantine.
No, yeah, I came out of the quarantine actually. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Finally.
You're in the illusory freedom. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so Ashok, why don't we start with the is my screen shared? Yes. Go ahead, Ashok. Seven realities. Are you okay, Thierry?
Avatar Meher Baba ki jai.
Yeah, thank you.
Existence, love, sacrifice, renunciation, knowledge, control, and surrender. I give no importance to creed, dogma, caste, or the performance of religious ceremonies and rites, but to the understanding of the following seven realities. One, the only real existence is that the one and only God who is the self in every finite self. The only real love is the love for this infinity God, which arouses an intense longing to see, know, and become one with its truth. 3. The only real sacrifice is that in which, in pursuance of this love, all things, body, mind, position, welfare, and even life itself are sacrificed. 4. The only real renunciation is that which abandons, even in the midst of worldly duties, all selfish thoughts and desires. 5. The only real knowledge is the knowledge that God is the inner dweller in good people and in so called bad, in saint and in so called sinner. This knowledge requires you to help all equally as circumstances demand, without expectation of reward, when compelled to take part in a dispute, to act without the slightest trace of enmity or hatred, to try to make others happy with brotherly or sisterly feeling for each one, and to harm no one in thought, word, or deed, not even those who harm you. 6. The only real control is the discipline of the senses to abstain from indulgence in low desires, which alone ensures absolute purity of character. 7. The only real surrender is that in which poise is undisturbed by any adverse circumstance, and the individual, amidst every kind of hardship, is resigned with perfect calm to the will of God. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. Just I wanted to
Uh,
add uh, that while reading this, there's one line where and then I was getting a thought that ultimately all are one. If you go, can you go to the first page, please, of Seven Realities? So it says that the only real existence that one and only God, who is the self in every finite self. So as we have always been reading that our own drop soul is a part of the oversoul, and ultimately all are one. That's what thought which came while I was reading. Thank you, Jay Baba.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So you were talking about somebody joining today. Are they have they been able to join? No, I forget the name.
No,
Sorry.
I sent him the link. I'll just check it out with him offline. I mean, you all can
Okay.
proceed. I'll just check it out. And I sent him the link.
Sure.
Maybe he had. He's Dr. Dominic Lovo. He used to work earlier with Mahindra. He's my school uh, mate or school friend, and he's
Okay.
attended Baba meetings, Jay Baba, and
Okay.
he will join. So, I mean, he's a pretty.
Okay.
He will
Okay.
join it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for asking. Yes.
Hmm. No problem. I just remembered your message. Okay,
Yes. Yes.
so we are in the 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 title avatars and puppet masters, in which I think some mic should mute. Um, we are in the second part of place of occultism, and within that, we stopped. We stopped after three sections, which we covered up to feet of the master. People constantly interacting on inner spheres, value of darshan and sahavas, and then feet of the master. We are continuing from mental contact. Any insights, questions, any occult experiences, any dreams in the last week that people wish to discuss? Nothing happened. All boring people, right? So let's go. Mental contact. Once the aspirant experiences the bliss of the darshan of a master, that sight gets carved on his mind. And even when he is unable to establish frequent personal contact, his mind turns to the master again and again in an effort to understand his significance. This process of establishing mental contact with the master is essentially different from merely imaginative revival of past incidents. In the ordinary play of imagination, the recall of past incidents is not necessarily animated by a definite purpose. Whereas in establishing mental contact, there is a definite purpose. Owing to the directive power of purpose, imagination ceases to be a mere revolving of ideas and reaches out to the master and establishes contact with him. Such mental contact with the master is often as fruitful and effective as his physical darshan. The inward repetition of such mental contacts is like constructing a channel between master and aspirant, who become thereby the recipient of the grace, love, and light that are constantly flowing from the master in spite of the apparent distance between them. Thus, the help of the master goes out not only to those who are in his physical presence, but also to others who establish mental contact with him.
Karthik, I think this is very, very powerful.
Yes, indeed.
I think this is what
I think this is
Baba,
the key differentiation, right? So this line is distincting. I mean, it's distinguishing what mental contact is all about.
yeah.
Right? Yeah, go ahead, Ari.
See, the inward repetition of such mental contacts is like constructing a channel between master and the aspirant, who becomes thereby the recipient of grace, love, and light that are constantly flowing from the master. This is what a repetition of the God's name that is there in every religion. And Baba always used to say, remember me constantly and wholeheartedly. This is the secret of that. Jai Baba.
Right.
So, Karthik, I also just wanted to add that there are many ways in which Baba brings people into his fold or his daman, and to make people realize about his existence. So, mental contact could be one of them, and as we see, a lot of these occult experiences or occult incidents. So there are different ways and paths in which people are coming into the realm of Meher Baba's world. Jai Baba.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One more.
But I
one
think
more
this is specifically about disciples that are already with him, and he's establishing a channel as Ravi reread, right? So it's for not just getting people to know about him, but then this is more for people who are already in the know and want to work with Baba. I mean, Baba is working through them and with them. Yeah, Ravi.
True.
Yeah. No
True,
matter
true.
how much we read discourses, God speaks, listen humanity, this book, that book, no matter how much we read, they are useful only up to a certain point in our life. Before the death comes, all we need is just to remember Baba wholeheartedly and constantly. That's all we need. If you can remember him in our last moments, that's all. We get this the realization. So this is the most important part of our being a Baba lover. That's what we have to do. Repetition of his name wholeheartedly. Jai Baba.
I have one query here. Baba has referred to grace, love, and light. So can anyone throw some light on the differences? Grace, love, and light. All are silent.
Grace, grace is
That's right. Grace and
grace is
love, I
like a
think, is
detergent,
light.
no?
Yeah, go ahead, Ravi.
I'm sorry. Yeah, grace is like a detergent. You use it, and if some mirror is completely dirty, we use the detergent, soap water to clean the whole mirror, and all the dust gets dissolved. It is like that. All our sanskaras will be wiped out. Love is the only thing that can be described from our point of view, uh, is the God part of it, as far as we understand. So we need to have the God. Even Baba said in Listen Humanity, right? I'm sure, Mamaji, you know that. Even I cannot love God as a human being. Only God can be loved as he ought to be loved. As a human being, that's what I thought it was. As a human being, even in the form of avatar, I cannot really love how he should be. And the light, I think it's just part of it. Grace, love, and light. That's what I think. My 2 cents. So I'm sure other people can show some more light on that. Jai Baba.
Yes, any other idea? So with the imagery of what Ravi said, say the unclean mirror with the coating of sanskaras is removed by grace. And this, if you imagine a magnet, if the magnet is covered with so much of dirt and all that, its attractive power may be very, very less. But even though it has that attractive power, so that is the removal of that, say, dirt is by grace of God. And after that removal, the attraction automatically happens. That is the love part of it, which connects both together in a very steadfast manner. And this love emanates from both of them. That is probably the light. So if you see a diagram of a, say, magnet, there is a sort of a round area of attractive force around it. Maybe that is, or the aura that projects out from the person's, depending on their intimacy or the contact or the love between the beloved. So maybe these three together can go like that. Any other inputs or corrections on what I feel like that? Hey, Baba.
Jai Baba, my understanding is that depending on each person's degree of consciousness, we are going to interpret the word grace, love, light. Now, to erase the sanskaras, we may have to make the effort of intelligent action, unwinding sanskaras. Without that intense effort and infinite patience, the grace won't come. So that is one aspect that one needs to work on oneself. That is why we have been given an intelligent mind. The second part about love, as I've said earlier, love is a medium, just like oxygen is mandatory for the material body to be alive. Love is the medium through which we progress in life, both material life and spiritual life, what you call as the head, heart, hands, blue collared worker, white collar worker, that without love, you can't progress. in both material and spiritual life. It is the medium through which one proceeds further. The only thing, the tools that you use are different in different categories. In karma yoga, you're using selfless service, in bhakti yoga, pure devotion, and so on. So love is definitely has different aspects depending on the context and how you look at it. We have talked about different types of love. Uh, Baba has said in the chapter on love that the fundamental forces of attraction, the four fundamental forces: nuclear force, strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, electromagnetic force, gravitational force. All these forces are also a rudimentary form of love. And then, as we have seen, love has different degrees based on which kingdom you are in. Now, in the human kingdom, most people are kind of, in the mundane, ordinary human love, which is, of course, a transition state to pure love and divine love. And then when you're talking about light, we know that darkness is the absence of light. Light is always there. And in every drop soul, whether you're starting from the rudimentary state, from the mineral state, or where you're in the human state, that love is latent within that individual soul consciousness. So the light I see is something that is like the sun is always shining. Of course, it has its time period, like 10 billion years. Now it's almost 4.5 billion years. So I think the light is something that can be interpreted in various ways. Jai Baba.
Yeah, Baba. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Jai
you.
Baba.
So, yeah, Khalid.
Yeah, I found Ravi's analogy of a mirror to be very interesting, in response to the question that Mamaji made. So, the dust, the ability to remove the dust and clean the mirror, that is the grace. That is not the grace, sorry, the mirror itself is the grace. The mirror itself is the grace. The image that is in the mirror, I would relate that to love and the ability to see your own image in that mirror. That is the light. That is
Yes.
light. So to me, grace, love, and light would be like the mirror, the image in the mirror, and the ability to see yourself in that mirror. That is the light. That's my understanding. Jai Baba.
Nice interpretation, Khalid. Nice idea.
Nice extension. Yeah.
It reminds me, some time ago, a long time ago, there was an article by Eric Nadel. Eric Nadel used to be in Mehrabad, and he used to take care of Master Muhammad. He was killed by some dacoits there. I think you all know the story. He was taking care of Mast and Muhammad. I asked Muhammad, Muhammad, can you give me a glimpse of what it is to be in the fifth plane? And then he started immediately feeling big light coming up, and then he was experiencing this light, and he could not withstand this light. And then he started shouting, Muhammad, bring me down, and immediately he came down to the normal senses. Probably Muhammad tried to push him to higher planes, and he was not ready for that. That is a divine light, not this ordinary light, but that is something beyond our, I think, conception. That just thought came to me when we are talking about the light. Jai Baba.
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah. So I'll continue. The next subtitle is Special Precautionary Instructions. The master devotes careful attention to the individual needs of the disciple, and the first thing he does is to protect the disciple from influences that divert his attention from the path or interfere with his progress. Often, the master requires the disciple to accept some kind of temporary isolation so that his mind is guarded against impacts that might impede his spiritual progress. Thus, some yogis, under instructions from their masters, prepare their own food and do not allow anyone to remain present at the time of eating it. The reason is to avoid impressions of evil from the glance of bad persons. A disciple is also likely to catch the impressions of another's lust, just as a clean cloth may be readily soiled by dirt. In the earlier stages, the aspirant must guard against any complications that might arise through association with others who are not on the path. But the master gives special instructions for the severance or avoidance of certain connections and contacts only when they are specifically indicated for a special case. In most cases, however, all that is necessary is secured merely by the constant company of the master, and no need arises to submit the disciple to actual isolation. Although the disciple may be outwardly in touch with the world, he remains mentally detached from it because of his inner connection with the master. Helpful contacts and associations. Rajesh, you have a question?
No, actually, I just wanted to add, I think, to the question which Mamaji asked. I think this paragraph gives the answer itself, right? What happens when the connection is made, and how his grace, his love, and his light helps him. So these are the three things which is explained in the last paragraph, which Mamaji asked, actually.
Correct.
That's according to my perspective understanding of the question.
Which part of the previous paragraph I missed probably?
Yeah.
Can you go back?
The first two sentences of the last paragraph and this paragraph. I think the last page. Go up a little bit. Yeah. Go up a little bit. Yeah. The master devotes careful attention to the individual needs of the disciple, and the first things he does is to protect the disciple from influences that will divert his attention from thepata or interference with his progress. Often the master requires the disciple to accept some kind of temporary isolation so that the mind is guarded against impacts that might impede his spiritual progress. So these helps once the connection is made. So the master takes care of this and you become an autopilot actually. Then you don't need so much of, basically you come in an autopilot mode and you're taken care.
Yeah, how does that light you're saying is, this is how the light part of it? You
Light,
meant,
I'm not sure. On light, I'm not sure.
Yeah, not specifically. I mean, yeah,
I
it's
see.
just yeah.
Okay. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
See, I just
Continue.
so,
Go
just
ahead,
1
Ashok.
minute. I just want to add that the revelation comes to everybody at his individual time. The light and the revelation. So it's basically a very we won't be able to generalize it. It will be different for everybody, every individual soul. Is that and here there's a lot of, I mean, importance given. I think probably one of the tools we can adopt is vipassana. It says that you have to be in isolation. So one of the tools for isolation or a retreat is vipassana. Jai Baba.
A number of times we talked about, some people talked about vipassana. What is vipassana?
Vipassana is being in isolation for a period of 11 to 12 days without human or very minimal human contact and going introspection. I was supposed to do it in a particular year. I couldn't do it, but I think it's a very good tool of cleansing, of self-introspection and meditating and calming the thoughts. And it's one of the good tools on the spiritual path. Even if you're not taking it as a spiritual tool, it's a very good tool for going inwards, because we, the gross body and the body, we always think about the external things, and very seldom we find quiet time.
Mhm.
And even I remember in my school, the priests, we had the Jesuit priests, they used to go into retreat. And I used to wonder what that is now. If I may join the dots. So, whether it is meditation, vipassana, any particular tool you take, but going inwards and looking inwards is what I can infer from here as one of my to-dos. Anybody could also throw light, but this is what my first thoughts. Thank you, Jay Baba.
Did Baba ever talked about Vipassana anytime? I never heard the name Vipassana in Baba's literature. Maybe he talked about meditation, but
If you go to the chapter on meditation, there is some reference to that. We can. I don't have the chapter. I'm not. I want to concentrate on this, but I'll find out and tell. But
No, I don't think there is a reference. If I remember right, there is no reference to Vipassana as a specific form of meditation by Baba. But the rest of what you said, I think I agree with. Basically, from what I heard and know about Vipassana, that's it.
Yeah,
Kama is the guy who.
It's of course a Buddhist tradition,
yes.
but still, I think we can take the good points from. This is what I feel. I mean, you can always take the good points and.
Yeah, Jai Baba, thank you.
Yeah, all right. So Kama felt it was very relevant to our inward journey and progress. So that's the context for Vipassana. Helpful contacts and associations is the next subtitle. Just as the master may isolate a close disciple from undesirable contacts and connections, he may also actually encourage and bring about new and fresh contacts that he deems to be in the spiritual interest of the disciple. He has a consummate understanding of the sanskaras and karmic ties and their complications. Thus, he can consciously help people to enter into such associations as will allow and call forth important responses and activities and help the progress of all concerned along the line of least resistance or by the shortest possible route. He uses his knowledge of the past lives, sanskaras, and connections of people to help them economize their spiritual energy and use it for the best results. Very interesting. I think MBA is an example of this. So, unity and the next subtitle is Disciple Used as an Instrument. The unity and solidarity of the inner planes makes it possible for the master to use his disciple as an instrument for his work, even when the disciple is unaware of serving this larger purpose of the master. This is possible because the disciple, through his love and understanding of the master, as well as his obedience and surrender, establishes a rapport with the master and comes to be in tune with him. Those who come into direct contact with the master receive his direct help, and those who are closely connected with the disciples receive the master's indirect help. Master as relay station. The sharing of spiritual work is by no means one-sided. Even the disciples who merely think of the master or meditate upon him have the privilege of sharing the spiritual and universal work in which the master may be engaged at that moment. As he is one with eternity, the master is beyond time and all limitations of time. As he is also interested in the spiritual upliftment of humanity, he assumes many of the limitations of time, and his work can be helped by the voluntary cooperation of his disciples. The master feeds upon the love of his disciples and utilizes the spiritual forces released by them for his universal work. In this way, the master is like the relay station that receives a song only in order to broadcast it to the world at large. To love the master is to love all, not merely symbolically, but actually. For what the master receives on the inner planes of consciousness, he spiritualizes and distributes. Thus, he not only strengthens the personal links that the disciples may have with him, but also gives them the privilege of sharing his divine work.
Karthik,
In
I have
so will
one.
I. Sure.
So when we say the direct contact, so here again it would be for us when we are like in this particular part of our journey. So even if we can we establish a direct contact one-on-one, because without his physical, I mean, body and presence. In the past paragraph, there's a mention about direct contact.
Yeah. So rephrase your question.
So I'm saying that in today's time, when Baba is not visible in his physical form, can we get a direct contact, or how do we sort of validate that? He says that. One second. Have you gone a little up? I think just should come down, come down. Just the last paragraph.
Okay. This one.
Yes.
Those who come into direct contact with the master receive his direct help, and those who are closely connected with his disciples receive the.
Yes.
That's what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Somebody interpret this, or can we have a small? In today's time, how do we get his?
So he's first distinction to take notice. He's being general here. He's not talking about Baba.
Okay.
He's talking about master and his direct disciples, and then people outside that disciple network, right? So in the context of Baba, we have talked about it even in the last meeting, right? So it's tough, it's challenging that we do not have the physical Baba in physical form. But the good news is he's accessible. The bad news in that good news is you have to use your intuition and firstly discover what is the true nature of intuition and make that contact and sustain that contact and make your progress through that channel, right? So that is again individualistic, and each one has to do it as per his comfort, and there's no set rules or expectations that you can have on that. That's my personal view. Any others?
Jai Baba,
Yeah, Khaled.
the line which we just read, the paragraph, those who come into direct contact with the master receives his direct help. Now, here it's not specified, the direct contact is with his physical form, or we can also have direct contact where the physical form is not required. So, in my understanding, direct contact is a little distance than the physical form of the master. Definitely, when the master is in physical form, there is but a direct contact. However, having said that, even in the absence of the physical form of the master, what Baba probably is referring to here is, the line of his lovers, let's say, like, we talked about MBA. So, Karthik yourself, or Kama, or say Ashok, or Sunil, took the initiative to put this group in form. Thereafter, with the rest joined in, and with our reference, the others also came in. So, in a form, we would probably see it as like, that your formation of the group was what we call, to some extent, an analogy, that this was the direct contact with the masters, and people who followed were the secondary line, So that's how I would interpret this paragraph as. And physical form of the master here, I don't think is so relevant. That's to my understanding. Yeah.
That is the best explanation. And one terminology that we can bring in here is the sahwas. So that is the first time I heard of this word or meaning of that when I came into Baba literature. So what do you mean by sahwas? So here there is no contact between the physical existence of Baba. Still we have sahwas. So the like-minded people, those who are in contact in different degrees with the master, come together and then share and then experience the interconnection. So this is sort of a contact, and then maybe Baba is using these things for the universal work also, so which we will never be able to understand, but we may be small parts in the whole cosmic program. Jai Baba.
Fair point, Mamaji. We also connected virtually, although we have not met each other for
Yes.
some time, and not met many of us. Many of us not meet each other physically as well. So good point.
Yes.
Something reminds me of an experience long time ago. Whenever I visit India, when I come back, I would spend like 3 days at Mehrabad. And then one time, I happened to come across another gentleman from India, and he was grandson of Tota Dhanapati Rao Naidu. I don't know if any of you know him or not, but he was the first Baba lover in Andhra. I'm talking about 30s and 40s. He was a doctor, and he was also, when Baba visited Andhra tour, he was also the driver for Baba's car. In Andhra tour movies, you can see him, and I think his name was Krishna. And we were just chatting, and he said he's also lived in United States. He's a physician, and he was going through residency. He came to India, and that's about it. He didn't say any other details except, and we started talking about Baba stories and all. One day, after the lunch, I continued to stay. All my family went to sleep to take afternoon siesta. We continued to talk, nothing any personal. And then we walked around Upper Mehrabad, then around that area. We had a darshan of Baba, and then came back and departed. After a few days, I got a call from him in America. And then he said, Ravi Garu, you helped me a lot, Jai Baba, that, this, and all. And then I was really surprised. What did I help? I did not do anything. This is what I said. I did not do anything. I don't know what I helped you. Then he started telling me his story. He had a fight with his wife. He was doing residency. His wife doing residency. They had a child, and he fought with his wife for some reason. And then he came back to India. And he lived there for a few months, and then he didn't know what to do. Then he came to Mehrabad, and then my meeting happened there. We never talked anything about his residency or anything. And then he tells me, Ravi Garu, you helped me. I said, I didn't do anything. If at all you got any help, I'm sure it is from Baba, beloved Baba. I don't know what I said, nothing. As far as I'm concerned, I had no knowledge, but I think he thought he got some help. And Baba works that way, through people. He contacts and helps the people. There's an incident that came to me when you're reading this To Love Master. How he helps the disciples. Jai Baba.
Yeah, I think I've been through a couple of experiences like that where people take away something which was not at all part of my messaging, and then obviously both of us subsequently will attribute it to Baba, but the impact of that interaction is so deep on the other side that you are left wondering, hey, what did I do type thing. So I've been through that. Yes. I'm very bad in recounting stories. Ravi is the best. So I don't remember in such
No, I
vivid
completely
detail.
forgot. This thing somehow reminded me, which happened almost 22 years ago. I remember it happened 99. Yeah, 1999. Jebab.
Yeah. So we'll continue. Subtitle is Internal Eye. In infinite ways, the Sadguru tries to draw the aspirant into his own or into his own being so that the aspirant may get disentangled from the mazes of the universe and come to desire God. This longing for God is present in the aspirant from the very beginning, but the master makes this primary longing more intense and articulate by opening the internal eye of the aspirant. When the internal eye is open, God, who is the object of search and longing, is actually sighted. As the gaze of the soul is turned inward and fixed upon the supreme reality, the desire to establish union with it becomes much more ardent than when the soul is groping for God through mere speculation or imagination. When the time is right, the master can open this internal eye in an instant. Om point. Ultimately, the aspirant has to realize that God is the only reality and that he is really one with God. This implies that he should not be overpowered by the spectacle of the multi-formed universe. In fact, the whole universe is in the self and springs into existence from the tiny point in the self referred to as the Om point. But the self, as the individualized soul, has become habituated to gathering experiences through one medium or another, and therefore it comes to experience the universe as a formidable rival other than itself. Those who have realized God constantly see the universe as springing from this home point, which is in everyone. The process of perception runs parallel to the process of creation, and the reversing of the process of perception without obliterating consciousness amounts to realizing the nothingness of the universe as a separate entity. The self, as the individualized soul, sees first through the mind, then through the subtle eye, and lastly through the physical eye, but it is vaster than all it can perceive. The big oceans and the vast spaces of the sky are tiny as compared to the self. In fact, all that it can perceive is finite, but the self itself is finite. When the individualized self retains full consciousness and yet sees nothing, it has crossed the universe of its own creation and has taken the first step to know itself as everything. The subtitle of this section was Reversing Process of Perception.
Karthik, this is a very profound paragraph. I think we need to slowly read it and try to make more sense of this. The first sentence
the slide
you read
is
and
very,
stop.
very important. Yeah. Yes, I thought as much. Yeah. The process of perception runs parallel to the process of creation. And the reversing of the process of perception without obliterating consciousness amounts to realizing the nothingness of the universe as a separate entity.
It's very, very
So,
quite dense.
no, I think the dense part is this. I don't know what the separate entity reference is. Till here, I am completely clear, right? But process of perception runs parallel to the process of creation. Agreed. And the reversing of the process of perception without obliterating consciousness. So with consciousness, you're using you're reversing the process of perception to realize nothingness of the universe. I'm with that. But then what is as a separate entity? I do not know.
I'm thinking it's just
Anybody?
a dream about our dream. A separate entity is just a dream, I think. See, the process, what is the process of perception is the dream world, right? The world of duality. And we also simultaneously create the creation. What creates the universe is nothing but our own mind creates the universe. And when we are in the involution process, we reverse that the process of perception. We involve, right? Without obliterating the consciousness amounts to realizing the nothingness. That is the nothingness. The world of duality is nothingness of the universe as a separate entity. Separate entity other than the reality.
That's
what we think, right? This is separate from God. That's what we think. That's what I'm thinking.
This comes just after the home point. So everything you can internalize inside. Process of perception and creation are the same. Perception and creation are creating the whole creation, or how the creation is existing. That is just a perception. So if that is what we perceive, it is not the reality as such. So when you perceive it as a different entity, it becomes a actuality that is known as separate entity, but it is not a separate entity because it is only a perception.
Yeah,
it is non-existent, but we perceive it as a finite existence. So that is what is referred to here, I think. So creation and perception, these two words are almost synonymous as per this sentence, I think.
No, more than synonymous, they are interrelated because one feeds the other. So, like Ravi said, it's basically creation is nothing but only with perception, the classic observer effect, right? So that's what I'm seeing. But why is it ending with a distinction of realizing this nothingness as a separate entity? Is not very obvious, but let's reflect on it. Anybody else? Kama? Yeah, obliterating consciousness.
Without obliterating consciousness amounts to realizing the nothingness of the universe as a separate entity. Reversing the process of perception. What we are doing in involution is reversing the process of perception without obliterating consciousness, which amounts to realizing the nothingness of the universe as a separate entity. Yeah. Kama can explain better.
Yeah, I had a point to make.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, like the perception that I am Khalid, that is a perception. But the process of the creation is that when it's the parallel of creation is like I am not Khalid, I am Karthik, I am Kama, I am Ravi, I am Mamaji. That is the reality of the creation. The illusion that I am myself is the separate entity. But the creation is that we are all drop soul of that one Paramatma. Okay. So, in my understanding, this is what is coming out to me from this particular paragraph. That the separate entity is the illusion that we develop, and this illusion which we surrender is what comes to me from this paragraph.
I just wanted to add, Jay Baba, I wanted to add that the word I am can be translated as God is. So I am Karthik, I am Kama. So God is Karthik, God is Kama, God is Khalid. So I mean, the word I am has been referred and been analyzed as meaning God is. That's why we say that we'll be very careful about what you say, because the I am can be translated as God is. Jai Baba.
Yes, next up to that analogy is remove that is also, then God remains. God, that is existence. Okay. Come in, please.
Yeah, Jay Baba, I think that line process of perception, as Ravi said correctly, reversing of the process of perception is the involution part. So if you try to define each of the, that whole sentence, if you break it out into different phrases, the process of perception and the process of creation. So the process of perception is the drop soul. So the drop soul is going from that home point, from that most original wind, going through the different kingdoms, getting different consciousness. Remember, consciousness is evolving. There was no consciousness before the whim. Whim itself is part of the nothingness of the nothing. That is number one. Then, when the happens, consciousness happens because the whim is a sanskaric impression. So, from a very rudimentary consciousness, we have gone through the mineral consciousness, plant consciousness, and so on. And at the end of evolution, which is basically human form, is the end of evolution. So, animal consciousness has been transformed to human consciousness. So, the process of creation can be looked upon as the whole process of all the different kingdoms evolving. Okay. And then the reversing of the process of perception, which Ravi rightly said, is once you are spending sanskaras and then realizing that the only goal of life is God realization, and then you have the grace of a perfect master, you start the spiritual journey of your involution state, right? So, in the involution state, what is happening is the gross consciousness has been converted to subtle consciousness. Subtle is converted to mental consciousness in the fifth and sixth plane. And then, once you have the grace of a perfect master, you are getting self consciousness, which is what we call as self realization. It's another way of looking at it, what you call as super consciousness. So, what it says is reversing of the process of perception without obliterating consciousness. Now, we know that consciousness is full and complete in the human form, technically, but only that it is contaminated with sanskaras. So, by the reversing the process of perception, which is what you call as involution, the coarser sensual desires are converted to finer, like the coarser sanskaras, gross sanskaras are converted to subtle sanskaras to mental sanskaras, and then sanskaras become zero, but consciousness is still remaining. When consciousness becomes zero, that consciousness in the sixth plane becomes super consciousness, because super consciousness means sanskaras is equal to zero. So then you realize that the nothingness of the universe as a separate entity, because throughout this process, till the sixth plane, there is duality, because we are getting over duality. In fact, right, involution is a process of God, that is a game of duality to get over duality. So the creation is still there in the sixth plane, but fortunately, in the sixth plane, you only see God everywhere. But the only hitch here is God is still an object of desire. But God is not an object of desire, because God is the subject, you yourself. So once you get the grace of the perfect master, when you transcend from the sixth to the seventh plane, the consciousness realizes that the self, I am God, which is what Ashok was speaking about. I am. So today only I was realizing that, when I was, when I got up, that why is God, again, this is a paradox. God, who is already infinite, eternal reality, why does he want to know himself? So it almost seems that if you look at the reincarnation states of each of us, each time we are born, we go through birth, school, work, death, then we go through the astral world, look at our past life, then make another script, come back again. Again, from the baby state, we are unconscious of our past life, correct? Because I read that in reincarnation and dharma, because every time you take a new birth, you get a new brain. So that new brain prevents you from accessing the mental body, the mind, where all the past samskaras are stored. So unless you reach a certain plane of involution, you don't know your past lives, and you should not know your past life because it's going to mess up your mind, you know. So I think that without obliterating consciousness amounts to realizing nothingness. So ultimately, you realize this universe is nothing. It's all coming out of us only, you know, when we open our eyes. Jai Baba.
Kama, you're saying that why, why the God became unconscious and why does he want to be conscious? Is that you're wondering this morning?
I would say let's make it like this. I was wondering that here I am. So okay. Instead of saying that, what I told myself was I'm already born. Now the question is, why am I born? So I realized that I am born because I am technically God, but I have not reached that state because I'm still dwelling in duality. So this whole process of being born and going through pleasure and pain or duality is to finally realize that I am God, but I have to behave like a God. First, I have to become God. I have to behave or have God-like qualities. Only then you can become. Because right now I have lust, greed, and anger, which we know is not God-like. So this insight gave me that okay, the idea is you intellectually know that you are God based on all our readings. Was to experience and realize that I need.
Somebody needs to mute, whoever it is.
Yeah, I had a question. So why did we get separate from God in the first place?
Rajesh. I think still Kama is still talking. Can you mute, please?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kama.
So I kind of suddenly got this insight that the fact that we all now understand from God Speaks and Discourses as drop souls, we are all, God in human form, but we have not experienced or realized that God realization state, where we become God. So this whole journey, I realized, because sometimes my mind used to say, it's so meaningless, like all these things. Okay, I've done my duties and responsibility. I'm sitting here. And I tell myself, like, why don't I just drop my body? I have nothing else to do now, But then I said to myself, there must be a reason I am living. And there is a reason why we went through reincarnation and we are born now with all this evolution, reincarnation. So finally, it came to me that the process of becoming God, theoretically you're God, but to experientially experience and realize God, we are going through this whole process. Jai Baba.
This question, a lot of people get that. Basically what you're saying is, why I was God, why did I become like this? Why am I a human? And then again, I'm becoming God. Why is this? I think every one of us had this question, and I think where was it in God Speaks? Baba said it is because of his whim, right? Why whim? We can ask him. Okay, and somebody was saying, I heard that. Suppose I felt like having ice cream. No matter how much you drill me, you can never get. Why did I get the thought of having ice cream? So it is as simple as that. Baba also said the same thing, I think in God Speaks, right? Or some other book. There is
Beans.
no
Beans.
beans.
First chapter of Beans.
Yeah. Whim is a whim. And we can never explain why God got the whim.
Yes, that is
That's as
Leela.
simple as that.
Leela.
Mhm.
Leela.
Yes.
Yes,
One
Rajesh.
Very good thought, Kama. I enjoyed your thought. That's a good thought. That's a good thought. That will help you
thanks.
to don't commit suicide. Okay, get God realization.
No. It's just the way the mind. What I'm trying to say is that. But I think another beautiful analogy given by Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was this. I think it was to one of his disciples of Vivekananda. He said, "Don't ask why or where the mango came from. Just taste the mango and enjoy it."
Yes, Yes,
That's
yes,
right.
yes.
I
That's
think that the analogy is that, hey, you've got a human form, you're not a dog or a cat, and you've got Baba to help you. Why don't you just enjoy life and be a pure observer witness? That is the answer that came to me. Jai Baba.
Jay Baba. Yeah, go ahead, Rajesh. You were saying something. Sorry, I
No,
stopped you.
yeah, I think beautifully explained. So my original question was, why did we separate from God when we originally were God?
Yes, same thing. What
Why
we
you
were
have
all
been coming?
Yeah.
You have been regularly coming, Rajesh. Why did you separate from us after 1 year? You came back. First, tell us that.
Yeah,
Rajesh,
yeah,
analogy,
yes.
analogy for that is very simple. Think of God as the ocean, the oversoul. All of us drop souls as the drops in the ocean. As we all know that the sun evaporates water from the ocean, which becomes clouds, and then due condensation, we have rainfall, raindrops. So if you look at yourself as a raindrop, and I
Right.
think this is so explained in God Speaks, actually. It's an analogy that has been used. Basically, a separate. Uh, so somebody has to mute, please. So the thing is, if we look at ourselves as a raindrop, which gets mixed in different parts of the earth, the raindrop which falls into the river goes directly into the ocean. You could say that raindrop is something which is already, like, probably gone through the process, but it's an analogy that we all want to unite with God. As a drop soul, you are God, but because of this separation, we feel that I'm not part of God. So that is why I was explaining my own, my own challenge, today morning, that theoretically we all know that we are all, aspects of God. We are in the image of God, but we need to go through this whole process, just like I call it getting the PhD in self-abidance or self-realization. If you are a kid, you probably have children, and your children are very ambitious, and one wants to be a rocket scientist, and one might say, I want to win the Nobel Prize. So you would say that, hey, you have to go through school, you have to do the bachelor's, you have to do your master's, and you have to do your PhD from a wonderful guide, hopefully a Nobel Prize winner, and then you can win the Nobel Prize. And I'll tell you one very interesting story. This was Professor Chandrasekhar, the one who won the Nobel Prize. The Chandrasekhar limit or whatever you call it. And I know him. Sorry, I don't know him. I know his niece, who's married to one of my best friends from college. And she wrote a book about. He used to come from University of Chicago to India often and give lectures, and go back. And it was about his personal life. And there is one incident that was very beautiful, that he was almost like Professor Emeritus, like. And during summertime, he used to go to this observatory about 3 hours from Chicago, 3 to 4 hours. And it's quite a long drive. And in that summer, he was going to take a course, but only two students applied for it. And the interesting thing was, he could have said, like, what, I don't have to take the course. But he used to drive, he used to come and take the course just for these two students, probably 3 or 4 days a week. He had to go back and forth, because he was also doing work in this observatory. And it turned out these two guys who studied with him got the Nobel Prize first before he got it. But what I learned from it was that how dedicated he was, even though he was so, famous as a teacher, as a professor. He didn't mind sacrificing, doing that long journey every day, 3 to 4 hours drive, come and teach these two students. And later on, the funny part is both these guys fight with each other, the Nobel Prize winners. So anyway.
It so happened, Dr. Chandrasekharan is uncle of my boss's husband, Rajagopala Swaminathan. His uncle, his father's sister. I don't know how the relationship is, but very close uncle. But they lived in Chicago, but they had a very, very private life. Even these guys never used to go very often. Once in a way, they used to go and visit, and only for very brief time and come back. They had a very private life. He and his wife. They didn't have any children.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Kama. Thanks for explaining it beautifully. Yeah, I have some ideas, but anyway, we'll discuss it next time. A little bit of noise around me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's continue then. So I thought
Go to
let's
the
go to
next sentence.
Siddhis. Okay,
No.
next sentence. Fine. Yeah, let's
Repeat
the
the.
self. So I still didn't get this, by the way, Kama. So what are we realizing as a separate entity, right? Because that's kind of antithesis of involution, right? So you're not going to discover something that's separate. So I don't know why that is
I
there,
think
but
No,
I'll park it for now.
it's the way
no,
the
Karthik. We think God is separate, right? Unless you are God real, unless you are very highly
So
evolved.
sixth plane. So sixth plane, you're saying up to sixth plane is what is
Yeah,
happening.
right.
So
right.
it's involution up to sixth plane. That's
Exactly.
I can take that. I can buy that.
That's because
All right.
of nothingness. That is nothingness. That's because the God is dreaming. That is because
Sure.
the consciousness is ignorant. Yeah.
Ignorant
That's
till that point. Yeah.
Mm.
Fair enough.
Karthik, another looking at this is that realizing the nothingness of the universe as a separate entity, it's the way it's phrased. Basically, one way of looking at it is without the subject, there is no object. Because ultimately, what is written that is everything is coming out of you. Okay, you are the creator,
Correct.
preserver, dissolver. Okay, each one of us as an individual drop soul can be looked upon as a universe by ourselves. Okay, like in the multi-universe kind of aspect. So when you only when you open your eyes, when you go to sleep, the world doesn't exist for you. The world can exist for other people, but other people don't matter, because what matters is you as an individual soul consciousness. So when you go to sleep, in the sound sleep state, you are unconsciously connected with the oversoul, correct? And then when you're asleep, you're also having a dream, the sleeping dream. Now when you wake up, as soon as you open your eyes, because in the sleep state there is non-duality. Okay, when you open your eyes, suddenly you see us and them. You see the objects. You see all the objects of creation. And that is the dualistic aspect. So I think that when you reach self-realization, there is no difference between the sleep state and the waking state, as you know. Remember the consummate consciousness, which we read about in the earlier
Yes.
chapters, you know. So that that human consciousness, which becomes super consciousness or consummate consciousness, there is no duality. So basically the universe doesn't exist because you're the self. So that for ordinary human beings, the universe is a separate entity, just like for all of us. But when you reach that state, the universe is nothing, because anyway everything has come out of the nothing, the 0 point. Okay, Bob.
Jai Baba. Thank you.
You know what
The self.
amazed me? I'm sorry, Karthik. You know what really amazed me about the God Speaks, my 2 cents is in the Vedic scriptures and all, we talk about they talk about God being existent in Vaikuntha and all these things. Parasamudram, milk ocean, and this thing and all. And I always used to think it's somewhere, it's not, I have nothing to do with that. Let me enjoy my life here on the earth. But Baba, in the whole God Speaks, the evolution of the consciousness, he took up a very simple example of our sleep, our daily sleep, our daily experience of the sleep. When Kama was talking about the sleep now, it just occurred to me. He compared that with the whole explanation of this God and the involution process and evolution process and all these things. That is the amazing thing of God Speaks. He was explaining all this supreme consciousness stuff with a simple example of what we go through every day through the dreams and deep sleep and the dreams and awake state. That really amages me. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, to just add to what Ravi said, if you want to really simplify God Speaks, and if you just understand only the first two states, yesterday I was discussing with Ashok and we got cut off. The state one, which is called the most original, beyond state of God, state one, Parapar Parabrahma, where God is asleep and unconscious of himself. And then when he wakes up, which is state two, which is called original beyond state of God, Paramatma. See the terminologies that Baba uses. State one is most original beyond state of God, which can never be defined even by the perfect masters and avatars, Paratpar Parabrahma. Only state that can be explained or described is the Paramatma state, which is state two when God wakes up. So Paramatma state 2 has three substates. That three substates comes after the whim. So when the whim happens, that is when this whole illusion starts. So in a way, if you look at yourself as a drop soul, because we are part of the oversoul, we are only going through the waxing and waning, what I call as the Paramatma state and the Paratpar Parabrahma state. See, for example, if your quality of life, daily life in the waking state is equanimous, the ABCD, awareness, being, contentment, cheerfulness, detachment, discrimination, and so on, right? And you have a very peaceful material life during your waking state, and your sleep is also good. We understand that. So you're having sound sleep state, no dreams. So that is like a Paratpar Parabrahma state. And when you wake up, this is where it's very interesting that you have two choices. Either you do intelligent action or you do unintelligent action. So interestingly, if you're doing intelligent action, you are actually state 2C, God in embodied form, because you are in being, not becoming. So when you're doing unintelligent action, you are like the becoming state, which is where the state 2B starts. State 2A, the first one. So state 2B, of course, is only when you become self-realized and you go into the formless. So I think that what Ravi said is very interesting, because here you can actually simplify God Speaks and relate it to your own daily life. And you realize that you are just in the waking state, you are the Paramatma state. So in the Paramatma state, you have a choice. Either you are being a devil or being godlike. That's it. Jai Baba.
Yeah. Yes.
Not necessarily devil and God, and all the flavors in between. That's our life. Right?
I think
Point
the
taken
chart
on
8
the
is very.
unintelligent action.
Yes.
Ashok.
Yeah, sorry. I think Karthik, the 10 states of God in chart 8. That's the. I mean, of course, all charts are important, but that's what I think has been referred to. Kama, can you just endorse that?
Yes, yes.
The 10 states of God?
Yeah.
Yeah, fine. Thank you. Fine.
So one more point. If you remember the chapter we read, good and evil. Okay, this is page 61 in Discourses. Now, if you look at the spelling of good, G-O-O-D, remove the O, you get God. Okay. Now, normally, if you ask the opposite of good, we should say good and bad. Why good and evil? So in evil, if you just add the word D, in the front, it becomes a devil.
Even.
In a way, it's an analogy for being good is intelligent action, being godlike, and being evil or being the devil is doing unintelligent action, because there is nothing like a devil, right? Because this is all part of the game of duality. So, Jai Baba.
Karma is in a devilish mood today.
Yes. And his oft-repeated phrase, and so on, means so much. We get bewildered. He goes on up to A, B, C, D, sometimes even E,
And so on.
and then so on. So,
What is the Karma? What is the letter Z?
Being, not becoming.
No, Z,
Awareness.
Z. What? So you keep going till Z.
No.
What is Z?
No. I stopped at 7. Okay, don't go beyond. Don't.
Okay.
I'll tell you another mathematical.
Ritual. Then it becomes a ritual.
Like, either
You will-
the most you should look for is simultaneous equations. 2x plus 3y is equal to 4. 4x plus 5y is equal to 6. And you can solve x and y. And x is basically, you can look at a male chromosome and y, female chromosome or whatever, like, okay? Because there are males and females, that's it. But if you want to go a little bit complicated, you can do quadratic equations. Ax square plus bx plus c is equal to 0. That is also a formula. But if you start adding more variables, which becomes what you call as a polynomial, a cube, a raised to 4, a raised to 5, and so on, then we are complicating our life too much, actually. So I think that that is why I said, like, the number 7 is the max one should use, because there are anyway 7 degrees of separation between us. So I try not to. You're right. We can go right up to Z. It's a task by itself.
No, but I think that's an interesting point you make. I was just listening to one of the pearls this morning, not the one I shared, and there was reference to Baba and 7, right? So he explains, and I think that's a good takeaway for me. I'm also going to not complicate life beyond 7, right? Minimalism, 7 is a lot already, okay? But surely if you cross 7, you're in trouble, man.
KISS principle. KISS principle.
KISS principle. Yeah, absolutely. Just keep kissing. So I'll read the line again now that with our renewed understanding, and then we'll read the whole paragraph and then move on. Yeah. The process of perception runs parallel to the process of creation, and the reversing of the process of perception without obliterating consciousness amounts to realizing the nothingness of the universe as a separate entity. The self, as the individualized soul, sees first through the mind, then through the subtle eye, and lastly through the physical eye. But it is vaster than all it can perceive. The big oceans and the vast spaces of the sky are tiny as compared with the self. In fact, all that it can perceive is finite, but the self itself is infinite. When the individualized self retains full consciousness and yet sees nothing, it has crossed the universe of its own creation and has taken the first step to know itself as everything.
the whole paragraph is
Mama is unhappy.
the whole paragraph is an epitome of what all we are reading from God Speaks and Discourses.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, let's think on that. Go ahead.
Jayabab, just one input here just came to me when you read this. What is happening here is that the self is infinite. Nothing happens to it. Basically, here it says the self as the individualized soul. I would add the word individualized soul consciousness. This is something I'm always repeating to myself. Whenever you read the word soul, soul's consciousness or the consciousness of the soul, because the soul is the self, nothing happens to us. What is happening is the consciousness is going through all this evolution in reincarnation, involution. And what is interesting out here is the self is always observing, okay? But unfortunately, when the self is gathering all these sanskaras, animal sanskaras, and then human sanskaras, it is, I'm not saying it is influenced by it, but the consciousness is entangled with sanskaras, right? So you have the self, you have the consciousness, and you have the sanskaras. Now, this consciousness is technically pure, full, and complete in human form, but it has gathered all this garbage, everything. And these sanskaras is what is creating all this chaos in our life. And ultimately, you have to get rid of these sanskaras, and this consciousness again feels pure. So, what I'm trying to say is first came the self, which is always there, existence, which is called existent truth, whatever. Consciousness came because of the wind. But then to realize itself, the consciousness needed to take different forms and take all the impressions or imprints or sanskaras, right? And then it had to now remove all the sanskaras. So it's like a life is a zero-sum game of sanskaras. We are accumulating sanskaras and then we are getting rid of it. Yeah, Baba.
Correct. Great. So let's continue. Siddhis. The entire process of withdrawing consciousness from the universe and becoming conscious of the self is accompanied by an increasing control of all the vehicles of consciousness. Such control is made possible by the vivification and activation of unused centers of control. And the functioning of new centers brings in its train a number of hidden powers. These new powers are commonly known as siddhis, and they can come before the aspirant has become spiritually perfect. In fact, egotism can flourish through the acquisition of such powers. The aspirant may not only take delight in possessing them, but might actually use them for mundane purposes from which he has not necessarily freed himself. Siddhis are therefore rightly regarded as obstacles to the attainment of realization. However, after God is realized, all these powers dwindle in their importance. The Siddhis have their scope in the nothingness that is the universe, whereas the person who realizes God is permanently and immovably established in the supreme reality. Although the whole universe is like a zero to the God realized person, he may voluntarily assume responsibility for those souls who are enmeshed in the tangles of the universe. In that case, he can freely and legitimately make use of these powers for the spiritual good of others. Furtherance of the divine plan. There is nothing that does not admit of direct or indirect control by the masters of wisdom. Large social phenomena such as wars, revolutions, and epidemics, as well as cosmic phenomena such as earthquakes and floods, are equally amenable to their control and direction through the release of the forces of the exalted planes on which the masters are consciously stationed. The masters may also use occult forces to effect cooperative and coordinated spiritual work. They frequently hold meetings and conferences on the higher inner planes for securing the advancement of humanity. The oversoul in all is only one, and it always functions as a unity. Those who have become conscious of this unity become fit to understand unlimited responsibility. Because they have shed the limitations of the human mind and have become so impersonal and universal in their interest, they are effective vehicles for the execution and furtherance of the divine plan on earth. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Cross
Karthik,
mark.
one.
Yeah. Go
So
ahead.
actually, these powers which you get is very important, but it has to be used for good spiritual work, but it can also be misused. I think that's some sort of a thought which comes to my mind. One has to be very careful here.
Very true.
But Ashok, what you're talking about is the powers, the occult powers that come between the first and the fourth plane. Remember, fifth and sixth plane, you can't do miracles or anything like that. So up till the fourth plane is a danger zone. And but the God realized person who has siddhis, it says, although the whole universe is like a zero to the God realized person, he may voluntarily assume responsibility for those souls who are enmeshed in the tangles of the universe. So that is different from the occult powers that people get in the process of during the planes of involution. You know, so there is a difference out here. But I have one question for the forum. The last line that he read, because they have shed the limitations of the human mind, have become so impersonal and universal in their interest. They are effective vehicles for the execution and furtherance of the divine plan on earth. So, can all of us put our heads together and can you tell me what does it mean? The divine plan on earth, the execution and furtherance of the divine plan on earth. Is it a game? Is it something that I'm curious about this. What do you guys have to say? Thanks.
Yes.
Kama, if I may say, it is basically the divine intervention as God wants it to be.
If you see the whole creation and evolution as such, we always think of what is the purpose of all this? Why did the uh, thing started and how it is progressing and it has come up to the level of the human status. So when you study all these things, the question comes, always comes is, what is the purpose of all this? So there is a plan and there is somebody who has planned it and he is executing it for a purpose. So that is what is referred to here as a divine plan. So this is a progressive aspect. That's why we need avatars coming every 700 and 1400 years. Why a single avatar cannot finish all the work and go back? That is not the plan there. So the whole system in the cosmos has to realize God. The whole drop souls, every drop soul has to realize that it is God. Till that time this goes on and there is a plan how it is being executed. That's how I look at it. It's a very say challenging thing to really think on these lines and then ultimately get confused or get realized. Jai Baba.
Good answer, Mamaji. I would like to add a little bit more to what Ashok said and what Mamaji said. This universe, we think all these country presidents, their rule, and all these companies are managed by the CEOs, all these things. But in actuality, yes, they do their own role, but that does not fully control the whole world. Actually, who controls the whole world is the five perfect masters and the highly evolved all those people in the fifth plane, sixth plane. I do not know about the fourth plane, but they are the one who are in charge. All these agents, avatars, agents, they're also in the higher planes, either in the manifest form or unmanifest form. They are the one who are controlling this whole world, our mundane world of duality. And what are their qualities? Perfect masters, we know they are perfect. They realized God, but they have the duty and they know what to do. And even the so-called fifth plane, sixth plane people, they are above the human mind, regular human mind. They have only a little bit of sanskaras that they need in the fifth plane and sixth plane, and they have the ability to control, to govern all the people's minds. Fifth plane and sixth plane people, they govern all the people's in the whole universe minds what the ideas they get, and all those things. So this is what I'm thinking it is involved here, because they have shed the limitations of the human mind. So how did the people on the fifth and sixth plane go? Because they had the human mind, but they crossed the limitations by working, and they evolved into fifth and sixth plane and have become so impersonal. They don't care about their own self, what their comfort or anything. Their work is only for the work that needs to be done. Impersonal and universal in their interests. They are effective vehicles for the execution of the furtherance of the divine plan on earth. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know whether I made it clear or not, but yeah. Jay Baba.
Jay Baba, there was this is from Discourses in about the circle, page 291, which we had earlier read. I'm still, trying to contemplate on the furtherance of the divine plan on earth, the divine plan. What is, yes, the divine plan, we all know that for each one of us is self-realization. I mean, I believe the only purpose of life, or the only purpose of taking a human form, is to self-realize or attain God realization. So in this particular chapter on the circle, page 291, it says, like the perfect masters, the avatar also has his circle. When the avatar takes an incarnation, he has before him a clear-cut mission that proceeds according to a plan. And this plan is always carefully adjusted to the flow of time. Okay. After that, he says here, after they attain, this is about the members of the circles. The members of the circles remain under the veil of Vijnani Sanskaras until they attain realization of God at the time fixed by the avatar. After they attain realization through the avatar, the Vijnani Sanskaras they brought with them do not constitute a veil, but for some become Yoga Sanskaras, serving only as an instrument for the fulfillment of the divine plan on earth. So my question again here is the divine plan on earth? Because during each avataric periods, we have seen that there are different yugas, Satya Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and so on. And each time the avatar has come, the environment was different, right? So if we compare Muhammad's time when he came into the desert and made the tribes, basically they were pagan worshippers. Whereas now the avatar has come in the industrial knowledge economy, information economy, or creative economy. Now, is the divine plan the same during every avataric cycle to make every human being understand that the only goal is God realization? Or is there some other divine plan? That was my question. Jai Baba.
I think to answer your question, the people, if you look at your own generation, Kama, when you were young, the situation, the environment, the world is different from when you are now. When I was little, the whole environment was different. When I was student, the whole environment was different. Now the whole world is different. The world has been constantly changing. Now, what causes this change is it is the people who change. They evolve to different levels. See, the world sanskaras are nothing but the conglomeration of all the people's sanskaras. I have my own sanskaras, right? I have my own pile of baggage. And I live in my house, and in my house, my wife and my daughters live. My house has got sanskaras. It is the combination of all these four together. That's how my whole village is the combination of all the people here. And as the new people come in, as the old people die, the newer sanskaras change. And because of this, the situation and the environment, everything gets changed. As the environment changes, well, Avatar comes once in 700 to 1400 years, leave alone those that much of span of time. Within 100 years, there's so much of changes is happening. So between the avatars, there is a big difference. in the environment. According to the environment, they change. They change their divine plan. Jai Baba.
No, I think the provocative part of Kama's question is, what is that divine plan? So is it now, in today's age, is it to get industrial revolution, move to the creative economy, or is it just give a push to humanity? Right? I think it's just push to humanity.
Push to humanity.
Just further the spiritual progress of these individualized souls who have gone astray, and increase the numbers. He has a target. He's coming in saying, "Hey, come on, let's kick some ass. Let's move people over." Right. So that's what I see as the divine plan, but I may be wrong.
So is the divine plan a divine game? That's what I'm trying to ask here. I know that the goal is God realization. That I'm very clear about. But the divine plan can be considered as a divine game.
It is a divine game because of the given situation. So what playing technique and the game you played in the Dwapara Yuga and later on in other phases are different because that was required at that time. So what is the play we are playing now is a different game, but the goal is the same. So the next avatar will play a different game and then take the goal to the same end. That is how we have to look at it. God realization for the whole, say, cosmos, everything, all souls to be released or liberated. So that is the divine plan. And that will be the end of the whole system. Then you can call it as a Mahapralaya, and then the whole process goes on like this. Why it goes on? It is Leela of the say God. So there is no explanation
So I think
for that.
correct. So divine game is the Leela, but as different from the plan. The plan is basically the project plan to push the souls. The game is the Leela, which is going on all the time, and when the sales numbers are not looking good, the head of sales, the director of sales, gets into the field and pushes the numbers. Right?
Yes,
That happens.
Gets into the plane and plays a different game suitable for that time.
Every time at that context, yes. Because the game is different each time. The context is different, and based on that game, he plays a different game. Right. So that's what I would say. Kama, do you buy that?
I just wanted to add something, Karthik. As you said, the divine plan and the goal is to push the soul to God realization, and so it's just that for the particular time, the particular process, and maybe things are innovating. So we have to innovate what is required for that particular period of time, relevant for that particular period of time. So if you permit me, I'll take an analogy of cooking. See, the desire to cook food and the desire to eat remains. So similarly, the desire to realize God remains. But we have seen over the years a lot of evolution. We had uncarbonized coal, we have coal, then we have petroleum products, then we have solar energy, electricity, and then solar energy. And now we have a technology in this creative new world where we can even warm our food from our car or from a remote. But the need for cooking remains same. I mean, the need for cooking and to have healthy food remains same, but the methodology, the appliances, or the approach can become changed or can have an innovation. I hope this is relevant, but this is what comes to my mind.
You know, somewhere in Discourses, there is one sentence we were all wondering about it. I forgot which chapter it is. God never, whatever happens in the world, God never gets affected. Baba talked about all the what is that? I'm trying to remember. He never gets affected because he knows it's all illusion. It is not true. What we are going through is a dream, right? So whether you call it a game plan or divine game or whatever it is, that's what it is.
Exactly, Ravi Garu, is that the divine, the ultimate goal is God realization, but there are different, you know, methods and different, uh, situations. I mean, it's situational. So that's what I'm trying to say here, and that's why there will be different solutions for that, different appropriate for that particular time. Civilization and technology and science and technology all has changed, all is changing, evolving, innovating.
Mm.
Does it make sense? I want a confirmation.
Yes, I think it sounds good. Say the reason why we are say studying Baba, God speaks discourses, and not going back to say our own religious texts, or each one reads their own religious texts, but the crux in all the religious texts seems to be the same, and that is brought into light by what we are doing now also. So we are doing it in a different way, that's all. It is the same process what is happening, but we are in different way because this suits our say either immaturity or maturity of the mind or intellect, and taking it beyond the intellect to intuition is done better by this than by what we have in store in so many religions as of now. That may be the way. It is changing every time. So next avatar will come and have a next God speaks. That may be totally different. But the essence of it is only the same. That is God realization. It will be explained in such a way that the existing souls at that time, with their kind of duality they are living in, they should be able to understand and surpass that duality to say realization. Jai Baba.
Mamaji,
Baba
if I just
said
want to add,
the next life is going to be born in Japan.
Oh,
So we better buy all Japanese, not Chinese.
okay. Mamaji, sorry. Just to sort of add, it's okay. I lost my thoughts. It's okay.
Sorry, Ashok. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, I think we're way out of time, but then I think it was a very interesting last few minutes on divine game and plan. But Kama didn't react to my bait. So did he agree or not?
Rama just
What's
creates
game?
this
What's plan?
key and leaves, and we are all pulling
Yes.
hair.
Yeah.
I already
Yeah.
became bald. Kama, without before you, I came into contact you, I had full hair. Now my back is all bald.
Okay. Lack of time, but I will try to put it in the in
Agent
our
provocator.
Telegram. There is in Everything and the Nothing a chapter called Toys in the Divine Game. Okay, and another one called the Question and its Answer. Because of lack of time, so I'll just put it on the thing, and tomorrow we can discuss that. Okay, Jai Baba.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you very much. Everybody have a great Saturday. And some of you might have to help me tomorrow with the reading, if at all I need it. Yeah. So I'll reach out on Telegram. Jai Baba to everybody.
Okay,
Have a great
Jai Baba,
Ladies,
Jai Baba,
Jai
everyone.
Baba.
Good time.
Sunil is there.
Bye-bye,
Sunil,
Jay.
myself, we can sort of. I don't know whether I should not make any mistake, and probably I just Karthi, I would require the updated. How do I say? It says the updated or this marked discourses in Teams only.
Yeah, so it's basically on the Teams folder itself. So yeah, you can do it if you're comfortable.
And the seven realities. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
what sort of
it's
help.
one book. No, somebody
Okay,
should
seven
just read
realities.
it. Share
Just
the
read it.
screen and
Fine.
read. And
Yeah, I'll do
all
that.
right, so I'll reach out to you. Yeah, I'll reach out.
Yeah, okay, fine,
Thank you.
fine.
Thank you.
Enjoy your weekend. Every Jai Baba. Jai Baba.
Jai
Want to miss
Baba.
tomorrow? Jai Baba. I'll see you
Jai
guys.
Baba, Jai Baba, everyone.